Hi everyone, I'm Mike, founder of Silver, a Zurich-based edtech focused on e-assessment. And today I'm going to talk about stop multiple choice testing, how to fix the e-assessment dilemma. So when we talk about multiple choice testing, there's so many different opinions, ranging from students who like it because it's easy and they luck out with the multiple choice test when they have not sufficiently prepared. Others think it would be better to do evaluation as they do the exercises in class. Then we have strong initiatives from EdSearch who say like multiple choice quizzes don't work. We find recent studies that say MCQ exam delivery is an effective and generally acceptable approach, and it could be used again in the future. We see some other research saying this type of assessment needs to complement it with other methods in order to achieve the expected learning outcomes. We have books on how to create good multiple choice tests, and we also have books on how to win them with secret strategies. So to sum that up, there's a lot of controversy about it. And what I'm going to talk about today is why this is really bad for e-assessment. So what I call the e-assessment dilemma is something that we can observe, especially now with a global health crisis happening a lot. So typically educators come from paper pencil assessment, and now that they are forced to teach online and remotely, they have to use more e-assessment. And in most cases, this ends up being multiple choice testing. And as a consequence of all the problems that come with multiple choice testing, they then decide to go back to e-assessment. And that means, again, more paper and pencil assessment. So it really seems that there's a trade-off between quality and quantity, or between the traditional way and a more digital way. And this, I think, is really bad because all the students suffer from that. Now, let's take a deeper look at why this is the case. So what is the problem with paper and pencil assessment? I already mentioned it in pandemic, or if you want to do remote teaching, teacher has to use a computer, students have to be on a computer, so it doesn't really work to do a paper pencil assessment in class. If you want to do blended learning where some of the learning happens in class and some happens at home, you also would like to use a computer. And one of the most important reasons is the grading. Typically, grading of paper and pencil assessment takes a lot of time, is error prone, and I don't know any teacher who really enjoys that. The solution could be letting it do computers and actually do it much faster. And this is important for students as they need the feedback of their assessments in order to learn. So once we decide to use more e-assessment, the question is, how are we going to do that? So there are two forms of e-assessment, and one I would call computer assisted. This is where we use the computer just as an additional tool, like a pocket calculator. So the student does the exercise or the exam in Excel and then hands over a file to the teacher, and we end up in the same situation where the teacher has to grade manually and has to provide feedback, and that will take a lot of time. So it's basically not e-assessment when you just use the computer as an additional tool. When we have computer-based assessment, then it means we can have the computer grade questions automatically. So how can we do that? One way is you go and develop your own e-assessment, you develop your own questions, and that will probably take you a lot of time and a lot of money. You can use tools. They reduce the amount of time and money. And but what most teachers tend to do is to see, like, what has my learning management system to offer? And this is multiple choice. And so to reduce cost and time, they think like that's the best option to go. Let's just use multiple choice testing. And the problem with that is actually there are quite a few. So it's likely that when multiple choice questions are too easy, then what you can do is only improve your tests, make the questions a little bit harder, but that takes time. Or you put time pressure on the students, and that really stresses them out. Some even develop anxieties because of that. Or you make the questions more tricky, and that will really get your students angry. So that's really not an option, and typically you would like to go back to what you had before, the traditional paper pencil assessment. Now, another really important problem, especially now in pandemic, is cheating. So how can we make sure that the results are not shared between students and then everyone hands in the same solution? One way of doing that is by randomization. And another way is by just developing sophisticated, comprehensive question banks. But of course, that takes a lot of time again. Another really big problem is ambiguity in multiple choice tests. So if you have that in your questions, it really makes students angry. It fills your inbox with requests. And the only way to prevent it is, again, to put way more thought into it, and that will take your time. Now, I don't think anyone really doubts that multiple choice testing is not a good way of assessing skills. So either you luck out and then it's not clear what you actually learn from it, or you get confused and don't understand, kind of get stuck. And it's very similar in terms of the feedback. So a multiple choice test cannot really provide a tailored feedback. And that means either it's very like dull and static, or it's just meaningless to the student. And all these reasons can lead to the impression that it's maybe better to go back. And then we are in what I call the Eassessment Dilemma. So in order to show you quickly like what the problem is, I prepared a couple of examples, and start with this one, very easy one. What are the chances to get this question correct? And it is 50%. So it doesn't matter what the question is, like you always have this chance of lacking out. And what can you do? You can create more of these distractors. So is it easy to create good distractors? No, it's not. And that's what I consider the right answer here. And now let's see, like I need to create a distractor. So I take the opposite of that. So yes, it is easy. Good. Now I know 2 is not enough, so I need to create another one. So let's rephrase this. Yes, it is not hard. Okay. And it's still not enough. So let's try to rephrase it again by using double negation. And that's something that students really love. And now when you're at this point, you probably notice, okay, I have 1 no and 3 yes. It's maybe too obvious. So let me get another no here. And in order to make it wrong, then I just put the opposite. No, it's not hard. And by doing this, you can see like how I introduce ambiguity by means of language here. And a student who really thinks this test is important will probably spend quite a while thinking about how to interpret the distractors and how to give the right answer in this case. So it is not easy, and that's why there are lots of books on how to write it. You can even call it like a separate kind of science of writing good multiple choice test. And I think no educator is probably good at this out of the box. Good. Now here's another problem that I've seen after I started using Mathematica. So probably after 1 year, I thought like, now I learned quite a few things. So let's take this Mathematica exam. And it was, all the questions were kind of built like this. So you have a question and then you get some code snippets and then you just select the right code. So in this case, we want to create a list of 5 consecutive numbers starting with 1. So let's use this and let's see, okay, it was right. But unfortunately, we don't know if I really understand the code here or if I just typed in this code into Mathematica and evaluated it and picked the right answer based on that. So I've been teaching Wolfram Language coding to business administration students for more than 5 years now. And I've seen like what the challenges are in kind of teaching students something like coding in a short amount of time. And I remember in the first year, I did not have any homework assignments and any way to test it because my class was 90 students and I did not have a teaching assistant. So I had a final exam and I was really, really sad after I saw how poor they performed, and I was really like questioning like my teaching. I've put in so much effort in like live coding and all this, but the problem is you don't learn coding by watching someone coding, right? So I switched then to doing weekly homeworks, and nowadays I do homework sessions 3 times a week. And it turns out it's so much more that they learn in a short amount of time. And nowadays, like they spend most of the time in actual coding and solving the assignments rather than watching me doing the coding. So how can we do that? Not with multiple choice tests. And now I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what we can do instead of multiple choice testing. And here is one where we want to find a function, and we are given with a plot, and we all know this is 2x squared minus 5/9. Okay. Oh, it's not. So let's try again. So we have now +4 and minus x, and check this. And now we see, okay, we got it partially correct. We got the intercept right, but not the slope. Okay, so let's try it again. Now this time I intentionally picked an easy example so I can solve it live here. So what is that? We get around 2x and say +5. And this time, oh, I got it completely wrong. And let's give it one more try where I try to get it right. So this is probably minus 3x minus 1. And here we go. So this is what I mean with meaningful feedback, right? So here in this exercise, you can see like the student can really try. They get feedback that's tailored on their answer. They can try out and they can really get to the learning path. And I mean, try to do this with a multiple choice test. It's also, I would say, less intuitive and also much less fun. Okay, Here's another version of this question, exact same idea. So graph a linear function, but this time we get the equation and we want to find the graph. So let me check this. It's incorrect. And you see, like it always shows me like what I put in here. And now you see also I get a different version now. So let me try to get it right this time. So 2x, and here we go. All right. Now we have been talking about the coding question, and that's also like a really important topic. So at the beginning, when I was teaching coding, so I always told students like whatever gets the job done. So you write whatever code as long as the output is right, it's fine. But then I saw like how how much bad code they wrote, and it was really not usable. So then I started to introduce a little bit more like challenges, and here we have some. So the main challenge here in this question is to sort a list containing 200 random integers and return the sorted list. And as the additional challenge, I put a character limit here and also a time limit. Now that's something. Let's try, for example, something like sort a list. Then it will tell me I have not used the simple data. So it's something abstract here, and I have to use data. Okay, good. Now I have prepared this. And, check this. So this is like a lot of code, but apparently very efficient. And now I check this and it calculates, okay, this took less than a second to evaluate, but it has 187 characters. Now let me try this again. And now I can use a really nice approach with pattern matching, very compact, very neat. I just go over the data and replace repeatedly whenever I find the sequence with the second and third element, and then I flip them to sort it. So really nice, but unfortunately, it's not very efficient, and you have seen like it took a little bit to calculate this. This has only 40 characters, but it took 2.4 seconds to evaluate. And as we all know, there's a much shorter and also faster way of doing it. But this is also how I kind of nudge the students into exploring these built-in functions and not kind of be happy when they wrote some spaghetti code that just does the job. And last but not least, we all know Wolfram Alpha and how powerful it is to have access to data and to know things that are going on in the world. And you can do like use this in the e-assessment, for example, like this. So I ask for a city in the US and the corresponding population. So let me try to type this. We will see in a second, it tells me directly like this is not a city. So let's try this and this, and it would check if this is a city and calculate or kind of retrieve the actual population of the city. And I put a little bit of error tolerance here so that this works. And now if I type something like Berlin and 3.4 million, then I get it partially correct because I get the population right, but not the city is in the US, and you kind of get the idea. So again, here we can take the student answer and really provide tailored feedback based on what they answer. Now, the question is, how do we do that? And now I'm switching how to do that. All right, so here we go into the question editor, and I show you how we set up such questions. So how do we set up a question that uses handwriting? What do we need for the linear function? We need a slope, an intercept, and a function. So I define my slope to be a random choice, numbers, and the intercept, and then I just say my function is slope times x plus intercept. Here I just plot the function that I defined here, and then that's what I can see here. Every time a student launches this, I get now a randomized version of this question. Okay, good. Now, how do we grade this? So first of all, we need to say, like, what is this type of answer that we're expecting? And here we can take a handwritten formula or many other of the interpreters that the Wolfram language has to offer. And what we can do here is we can say, like, this is fun, and then we just base the grading on this. And it's so easy. So what we actually only need to do is to check if the function that's inputted here as the student answer, does that equal our function that we defined here. And we make sure that this is the case when we simplify it. All right, now, in order to get the partially correct, we also need to look a little bit more of what's going on and investigate a little bit deeper of what the student answered. And here we can use the coefficient list and just take the first part and the second part that gives us the intercept and the slope. And since we have defined our intercept and slope before, we can again just compare them. And that's all we need to set up the question. Then when it comes to the feedback, obviously when it's right, I can just say, great, you got it right. And for the case of the partially correct, I want to provide like the really like the tailored feedback. So I have a plot where I plot the function that was asked for and the function that the student inputted, so that they can compare it and really see how it's wrong in this case. And all I need to do is like I need to reuse those conditions, so the things that I checked before, and that will lead me to kind of the right feedback to give them. And in this case, I have two of these conditions defined, but you can imagine like you can do it in a more sophisticated way and have even more checks for this. Now, let me also show you how we grade the coding question. As you have probably noticed, like there was nothing, like no like numbers given, like we were asking for a code that does something like abstract. And what we define here is some test data, and we just take 200 random integers, and then we define our question, of course, and then say the answer is code. So interpret it as code, and it will treat it as a string, but also be able to evaluate it. So the way it works is I take the student answer, the code that they provide, and I inject the data that I have defined here. I inject it there, and then I just check if it's going to give us the same as the sort. And then we're sure that they got the answer right. And in order to also calculate the timing and the number of characters, I added one condition here where I calculate or stop the timing that's needed to evaluate the student answer code, and then also count the characters. And you see, like, it's really not too difficult to set up such a question, and it's quite powerful. So with this question, it's not easy to cheat. It is also that you could potentially put more randomization into the numbers or data sets in the question, and that really makes each question unique while you're still evaluating the same concepts. And then when it comes to the grading, now here is just one example that we can do much more than just have a number of conditions and adding up those that evaluate to true. So here we can simply check, like, is the list sorted? Is the timing less than 1 second? And did they use less than 50 characters? And then this gives full points. And as soon as we have either only the list sorted and the timing, or the list sorted and the characters, then we give partial points, and in all other cases, we give 1 point for efforts. And again, we provide tailored feedback by using what we have calculated here in the conditions, and can use this like to discriminate like which kind of case we have here. So is the list sorted and the characters less than 50, then we will tell them to try to make it faster. All right, good. And since we are running out of time, I'm going to get back here. And I hope that if you're leaving today with just one message, I hope it's that e-assessment is not equal to multiple choice testing. It's actually way more powerful. And if you want to see a demo, want to do a pilot, or just chat, please feel free to get in touch. Thank you. So we have one question from Dave. So how do we test if a student knows which of Euclid's common notion justifies a particular statement without using a multiple choice question? Okay, so I'm not going to read out the whole question here. I think it's also in the chat. So my point is that we have way better options than trying to use multiple choice questions as the only tool for everything. I acknowledge that there are cases where it makes sense when you maybe in some cases where you have like clear like logical distinctions. Yes, that's totally fine. I picked maybe a rather dramatic title for this to make people aware of that this like dilemma that we have, that what we find a lot at the moment, that people discussing like, oh, we used e-assessment, but it's not going to work. So I hope that after the pandemic, we can just go back to our paper and pencil exams, because that's the only high quality type of assessment. So that was my intention, to say like there are good alternatives, and we just need to kind of get in touch with the technology and try it out, learn from what students say. And yeah, so that's kind of my point. I do see that there are a few multiple choice, or a few cases where multiple choice questions are probably totally valid. All right, good. So do we have more questions? All right. Doesn't seem that there are more questions. Then I thank you very much for your attention. Please feel free to reach out. Also for discussions, I'm very happy to talk about any topics related to. Oh, yeah, there was one more question from Jeremy. What platform is this running inside of? So our platform is called Silver, and it's using a Wolfram EPC and a Wolfram engine in the back end. So we do have actually also an authoring tool that's an add-on to Mathematica. So a palette you can install. And so everything that you saw today was graded based on Wolfram Language, and we kind of use this as our back-end engine to do all the heavy lifting. All right. More questions? Let me try to show you this on. So here's my Mathematica. And here you see like this is Mathematica notebook, it's palette. Sorry, it probably looks terrible because I'm only sharing a portion of my screen. I'm trying to do this here. So just saying like this is a Mathematica kind of plug-in, and the only way or the only reason why we decided to eventually move to online platform completely is that many educators still found it more convenient to do the editing right on the platform, where the students at the end will take the tests. So, but as you can see here, we can use everything that I showed you before, like all these like conditions and so on. We have this in Mathematica, so if you think like you like to use Mathematica and want to create sophisticated e-assessments, we also have a solution for you. And again, please feel free to reach out to me after the session. Unfortunately, not enough time to show you all the things we do. We also create like full course materials with interactive elements like manipulates and so on. So lots of cool things that can help teachers to make the teaching and learning more successful. Good. Do we have more questions? Last minute questions? I'm looking forward to get in touch to everyone who's interested to learn more. And thank you for your attention. Have a great day. Have a great finish of the conference.